It seems like every weekend there are more and more races that are starting to pop up. Things look pretty optimistic right now that by fall, maybe some of the big marathons will be back. Probably not in exactly the same fashion. That might take a little bit longer, but it sure seems like, fingers crossed, that racing is coming back. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about racing, kind of get you in the mood if you're not already there. So we're going to talk about my buddy Howie Mandel. Now, this is not Howie Mandel on America's Got Talent. But as some of you may know, Howie used to host a game show called Deal or No Deal. Now, in case you haven't seen it, I'll go through the premise of it. If you've seen it, well, you're going to hear the premise anyway. There are 26 briefcases that they have up on stage, and in each briefcase is a card saying how much money is in that briefcase. It could be anywhere between a penny and $1 million. So the contestant starts by picking a briefcase. They have that. That's theirs now, but they have no idea what's inside of it. They could have the one for a penny. They could have one for $1,000. It could be $25,000. It could be $1 million. They don't know what's in there. They then start going through and eliminating briefcases. They'll say, show me number 12, and they open that briefcase up and it says $500. Well, now they know that their briefcase doesn't have $500 because that one's up there and that one's gone. And they start going through those. Well, after they go through a few, Howie will start offering the contestant a deal and say, well, I'll tell you what, Mark, I'll give you $5,000 to stop now and you take the deal. So if I take that deal, I get the $5,000. My briefcase could sell $1 million in it. I don't know unless I've seen it up on the stage. I don't know. As the contestant starts eliminating briefcases up there, getting more and more aware of what he or she might have in their briefcase, the deals get sweeter. It might be, I'll give you $12,000. But if you know that you've got a decent chance at the $1 million, you have to decide, do I take the deal or not? So what does this have to do with running? Well, Howie, during your race, is almost certainly going to come and he is going to give you an offer. He's going to offer you something, but it's not going to be money. It's going to be, Mark, 5Ks, they've never really been your thing. You've got another 5K in 3 weeks. Why don't you just slow down a little bit for this one? You're going to feel a heck of a lot better. You can race hard at the next 5K. And he's got dozens and dozens of things that he can say to you. And you have to decide, am I going to say deal or no deal? But I think it's important to remember that you are going to get offers. The only time you won't get offers is every now and then you have what I refer to as a unicorn race where everything just flows and you're on fire. I can only think of 2 unicorn races that I've ever had in 20 years of doing races. And in those 2, Howie never paid me a visit. But in every other race, he certainly does. And as I said, he gets more insistent. So let's talk a little bit about some strategies that you might use. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's lots of things you do. But what you want to be able to do is say, I know Howie's going to come. He's going to come multiple times. And I'm going to say, Howie, no deal, because you want what's in your briefcase or your race. So the first strategy actually starts with your training. You should be keeping a training log, and you should find something positive to write about every single run. Now, there are runs where it's not very easy to come up with something positive, and you might not be able to do it right after your run. You might have to give it to the end of the day or 24 hours to really think about that. But try and find something positive to write out every run. And when I say positive, it can't be a fake positive. You can't say, well, I didn't die. That's not a positive comment. That's a fake comment. But find something, even if it's, you know what? Yeah, the run was hard, but I saw these beautiful flowers, whatever. Try and have something positive that you can write about every run. And I'll guarantee that if you take the time and think about it, and you want to do it for every run, you can do that. And you're going to use that later. Because your next strategy is in the days before your race. So some things you want to do in the days before your race is review that log. You go back and you look at your runs and you look at those positive comments. What you're trying to do is build up that positivity in your head to give you confidence. And the next thing is your pre-race routine. And the pre-race routine is not just the day of the race, although you should have a routine just before the race starts, but it's the day before the race. It's kind of that whole week, depending. For a 5K, it might only be a couple days. For a marathon, it's the entire week. But you should have some type of routine that brings you confidence in what you do. I generally recommend that people are running, 2 to 3 miles the day before a race, with maybe the exception of a marathon. They do some goal pace running within that. I recommend here's some running you should do before the race. It doesn't have to be those things. Those are things that I find work for me. I think they work well for most people. But what's important is not what you do, but is something that is a routine for you and has confidence building, because you want to toe that start line feeling like you're ready to go. So what do you do then when Howie comes? Because as I said, he's going to come, and I've just got a couple things that you can think about here. I'm sure there are a dozen more. In fact, make some comments about it. One is realizing it's a slippery slope. And what I mean by that is the first time you take the deal, it's hard because you fight against it. You don't want to do it. Then if you finally cave and take the deal, I'll guarantee the next race, when Howie offers you a deal, it's a little bit easier to take it because you've taken it before. Probably the best analogy I can give, which maybe isn't the world's best, is you think about the teenager who's gotten him or herself a fake ID, and they want to see if they can go and buy beer with that ID, and they're nervous. There's probably cameras out. The police are going to catch them. They're going to be arrested, and the fake ID works, and they can buy beer. So the next time they're not quite as nervous, and the next time they're not quite as nervous, and pretty soon they don't even think about it because it's working all the time. That's sort of the same thing with the slippery slope. Once you start taking deals, it becomes easier and easier to take the deal. So realize that if you take the deal, you're not just taking the deal for that race, you're kind of setting a precedent for yourself for deals in the future. And really the last thing is, how will I feel about this if I take the deal? How will I feel about it later in the day? So if you're in that 5K, that marathon, whatever the distance is, and you decide to take the deal, before you take the deal, ask yourself, later on this afternoon or tomorrow, how will I feel about taking this deal? Will I feel like, yep, I should have taken the deal, that was a good thing? Or will you be upset with yourself that you took the deal? For me, that works sometimes, even in hard track workouts. I think, how am I going to feel about this later? Do I really need a deal, or I want the deal? And as I said, there's all kinds of other strategies. The intent wasn't to get into everything that you might do. You can find lots of videos, books, things on the mental part of racing, if you will. But just realize that Howie's a good guy. Love him on America's Got Talent. He was a good game show host. But when Howie visits you in the race, you've got to say, Howie, no deal.